A horrible Jets season ends on a high note. We now know where the Jets will pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, plus some major developments from the Jets coaching search. We have a lot to discuss today on Locked On Jets.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you so much for making the show your first listener, first watch every day. Big shout out to you, everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. We have a very busy show today. The Jets concluded their 2024 season with a win over the Miami Dolphins, a vintage Aaron Rodgers performance, words that have not been spoken all that frequently this season. We now know the Jets draft positioning for 2025. I have something I'd like to say to Jets fans, a lot to get to, but let's start by talking about the Jets coaching search because there have been some major developments since we last spoke. And I think this is what most Jets fans are focused on. It is the story that will dominate coverage around the Jets for the next couple of weeks. Today is Black Monday. Teams will begin making changes as soon as this morning. You'll start hearing about head coaches and general managers who will be fired by other teams. The New England Patriots actually got a head start on Sunday by firing head coach Jerod Mayo after the Patriots beat the Buffalo Bills in their season finale. This is major news for the Jets for a couple of reasons. The first and most obvious and most tangible is the Patriots are a division rival. They are a team the Jets are competing with directly every single year for a playoff spot, for a division championship. They are a team the Jets play twice a year. So those three teams the Jets compete with in the AFC East, Buffalo, Miami, New England, any move they make is very significant for the New York Jets, and it impacts them directly. But this impacts the Jets even more directly than a division rival making a coaching change typically could, because it directly impacts who could be available to the New York Jets. On Friday, the Jets completed an interview with Mike Vrabel. Vrabel, of course, is the former head coach of the Tennessee Titans, who spent this year working as an assistant with the Cleveland Browns, and the Browns let him out of his contract a little bit early last week so he could begin interviewing with teams because coaches who coaches who were employed during the season are not allowed to speak with teams, are not allowed to interview for head coaching jobs until the season is over. So the Jets got their interview done with Vrabel on Friday. But the Patriots firing Mayo perhaps changes everything about the Jets' potential pursuit of Mike Vrabel. Now, it's still early in the game for the New York Jets, so we don't know that Vrabel necessarily was the top candidate or is the top candidate, but he's felt like a very logical fit for a couple of reasons. First is that there has been a lot of reporting that the Jets are focused on an experienced candidate, that the Jets are hesitant to hire another first-time head coach. That's not to say in the end they won't, but it sounds like the Jets' preference right now is somebody with head coaching experience. And of the candidates who are available who have head coaching experience, I think it's fair to say Vrabel's the top guy. Vrabel has the best track record of any experienced coach who's available. And by most account, the interview went pretty well with Vrabel on Friday. There was some buzz that both the team and the head coach, were pleased with how things went. It's been widely reported that Vrabel wants to bring in his own front office. And the Jets at the moment we're recording, that could change, are the only team that also has a general manager opening. So the Jets, if they really wanted Vrabel, could put the whole full court press on and tell Vrabel, you can choose your GM. And I think for the New York Jets right now, the franchise needs somebody who can come in and restore credibility. And I'm not going to lie to you. I have some reservations about Mike Vrabel. I think there are some open questions about what hires he would make on the offensive side of the ball. His tenure in Tennessee was kind of mixed in this regard. There were some very good hires. He hired Matt LaFleur as his offensive coordinator. I think Arthur Smith was also a very good hire, but he also employed Todd Downing as his offensive coordinator. He employed Keith Carter as his offensive line coach. And if you're new to the show, you might not know this, but if you're an everydayer who listens every day, you know that I'm not a big fan of the Jets offensive line coach Keith Carter, who Vrabel employed in Tennessee. There are some other questions about how Vrabel would manage the team. There are questions about would Vrabel embrace a rebuild? There are questions, would Vrabel maybe go away from his run heavy tendencies that he adopted with the Tennessee Titans? Were the Titans so run heavy just because they had Derrick Henry, or was that a philosophical thing with Vrabel? There are a lot of things you can go into, but at the end of the day, I think Vrabel is the top candidate for the Jets, just because I think they need somebody who can go in and restore credibility, and somebody who can be the guy. I think part of the problem with the Jets is they kind of have they frequently have a GM and a head coach who are kind of operating in different spheres of influence. And ultimately what happens is, the two of them don't agree with things. And Woody Johnson kind of comes in as the tie-breaking vote. And Woody Johnson can't be involved in any sort of football decision. We've seen that over and over. I like the idea of having one boss, one guy who's in charge of everything football related, and everything runs through this guy. Because at the end of the day, that guy's going to Woody Johnson, and that guy's saying, this is what I need. And I think the Jets are at a point where they're so desperate to, gain some sort of respect that they'd probably be willing to give Vrabel more than any other team in terms of power. And because they have an open general manager spot, they can tell Vrabel, you know what, pick your guy. Would Vrabel be good at that position? I don't know. Usually this is the type of position that goes to guys like Jim Harbaugh or Sean Payton over the last couple of off seasons, for example. I don't know that Vrabel's on that level. I'm not sure he should be on that level, but I don't see a better option available. So I kind of lean towards Vrabel being the right guy. But this New England job opening could throw everything, could make that moot, because Vrabel spent most of his career with the New England Patriots. He was a player on the Brady Belichick dynasty team during the early days. He started his career with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but then came over to New England, spent a couple of years at the end with the Kansas City Chiefs, but really a guy who grew up in the Patriots organization. And he was rumored to be a candidate last year after Bill Belichick left New England. But Gerard Mayo apparently had it written into his contract that he was the heir apparent to Belichick. And Patriots owner Robert Kraft really liked Mayo. Of course, 1 year later, things are changing. And of course, sometimes you think a guy's going to be great, ends up not being that great. And I think that's what happened with New England with Gerard Mayo. I'm really interested to hear what my buddy Mike Debate has to say about this on Locked On Patriots. But I think right now you'd have to say Vrabel's probably the odds-on favorite to get the New England job. I think New England has some advantages that the Jets can't offer. Now, what the Jets can offer is the Jets can offer Vrabel the chance to choose his own GM. But that might become less important to Vrabel if he's comfortable with the organization. Again, this is an organization he came up with if he's comfortable with the owner. And for all of New England's faults the last couple of years, and it has not been a good last 5 years or so in New England, I think practically any coach would rather work for Robert Kraft than for Woody Johnson. But New England has some other advantages. New England's going to enter the offseason with the most salary cap space in the league, and they have a quarterback who a lot of people are high on in Drake May. And these are things the Jets quarterback situation is anything but clear. And the Jets salary cap, at least for this year, is not in good shape. Now, you're 1 year away from resetting the cap if you make the right moves. So maybe that's not a big deal breaker. But I think in every way, it's more likely that Vrabel goes to New England than the Jets. And New England was kind of the team I was watching. News broke on Sunday morning. Adam Schefter on ESPN suggested that it was likely Mayo was getting fired. To me, that was a game changer, because I feel like the Jets competing with every other team would actually have a pretty decent shot with Vrabel. Despite all the issues with the franchise, despite Woody Johnson, it just feels like the Jets are in such a desperate state that they'd be willing to give Vrabel what he wants. And Vrabel at least has seemed open. It doesn't seem like Vrabel closed the door on working for the Jets immediately. But New England becoming available, again, a franchise he's comfortable with, an owner he's comfortable with, a situation that in many ways is very attractive. Again, quarterback, cap space, stability, and the ownership that the Jets simply cannot offer under the current owner. I wonder now if Vrabel's a possibility. I wonder if the Jets, and I also wonder, because of the ties between Vrabel and the Patriots, is there already a deal done? I think that's something we'll find out in the days to come. But I wouldn't put it past them to, before they fired Mayo, get some assurances that Vrabel's coming. Speculation on my part, but I don't think completely unfounded if we're making educated guesses on how things go. Now, this could have major implications on the Jets' searches for a new coach and general manager, from the standpoint that if they were going for Vrabel, it would have been a very head coach centered focus. And if they're not going to get Vrabel, they're probably not going to have somebody. They're probably not going to hire a coach who has as much authority, which means they'll probably go with the GM first. So I think the search would then the focus would then shift over the next couple of weeks, and we'd really be focused on getting the GM in place before we hire the head coach. So a lot to watch here, but major development. A move that impacts the Patriots, obviously, because the Patriots fired their coach, but move that has major implications for the New York Jets. We'll keep our eyes on this in the days ahead. That's your Locked On Jets podcast. I guess we have to talk about that game. I mean, the Jets did win. Aaron Rodgers actually played pretty well. What can we take away from this season finale? We'll try and figure it out. We'll try and put the pieces together what this game was as we continue here on this Monday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by LinkedIn. Growing your small business in 2025 comes down to how well you can hire. And let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in. With the strongest hiring data available, LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. The Jets might want to use LinkedIn. We know that they're looking to hire some people. They're looking to hire a new head coach and a new general manager. It's the best place to go. And we know the Jets haven't done a great job hiring in the past. So, again, LinkedIn might be the place they should look. Small businesses are wearing a lot of hats, so every hire is crucial. LinkedIn gets that. That's why they connect you with the best candidates using data you won't find anywhere else. From unique skills and interests to the connections you share, LinkedIn helps you find the right person for the job. In fact, 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high quality candidates. Hire smarter this year and find your great next hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That can happen to you. You may have subscriptions you don't even realize you're still paying for, and Rocket Money makes it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finance. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending and helps you lower your bills so you can increase your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved over $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. I really ought to get it myself. I'm awful about not keeping track of my subscriptions. I have a subscription to like every streaming service known to man. I barely use some of them. Rocket Money is the place to go. Don't make the same mistake as me. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listener, first watch every day. Big shout out to you everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. Jets completed their season yesterday in a game against the Miami Dolphins. The final score was 32-20. The Jets won, so the Jets finished the season 5-12. That game had the feel of like a final preseason game more than it had the feel of a final regular season game to me. And look, I've watched the Jets through a lot of lost seasons. I've watched a lot of seasons where they played out the string. They play that final game late December, early January, and there's not a lot of intensity in the building. But usually, like, it at least feels like a regular season game. This one really felt like a preseason game. And I think part of it was just it seemed like from watching it on TV that stadium seemed like half full. There were a lot of empty seats, which I think in part was just how bad this Jet season has been, how frustrated the fan base is. But I think part of it's also the game got flexed to 425, and people didn't want to sit in the cold after the sun's gone down. It really did not have the feel of a regular season game. Sometimes the second half of preseason games become tough to watch because you just don't have NFL caliber quarterback play. And that's really what Miami gave you in Tyler Huntley yesterday. Tough to believe how poorly the Dolphins managed their backup quarterback situation, given Tua Tagovailoa's tendency to miss games. Tyler Huntley, I mean, didn't look like he could function at all for most of the game. I guess he had a couple passes in the fourth quarter, led the Dolphins on a couple drives there. But for most of the game, it felt like Miami wasn't capable of completing a basic pass from the pocket. I mean, they made a couple plays on broken plays. They made a couple plays on screens. They broke a couple big runs, but Miami's offense was just so inept in this game. Again, it reminded you of a preseason game. And also, like, there were moments where it didn't feel like the Jets were really that focused on maximizing their point total. It felt like the Jets were, kind of like in a preseason game, you're looking to focus on specific things. I'm talking about like Aaron Rodgers in the red zone. I mean, there were a number of times where, including one that was really egregious, where he passed up an easy touchdown pass to Kenny Yeboah because he wanted to hit Davante Adams for a touchdown, and then Rodgers finally hit a touchdown to Adams. Rodgers went over 500 touchdowns for his career in this game. It was actually a really, really good performance by Rodgers. Something we haven't said all that much this year, but Rodgers finished the game with 4 touchdowns. Maybe he just needs to play Miami every week, because I think like his 2 best games of the year were both against the Miami Dolphins. Something about that defense brings out the best in him. But he finished the game with 4 touchdowns, some really nice deep balls. One to Allen Lazard down the middle, which Lazard almost dropped. A couple to Davante Adams. Does it really mean anything? No. I mean, we know that this is almost certainly Rodgers' final game in the Jets uniform. We know that it's probably his final game in the NFL. I guess he goes out on a high note. I mean, I don't really think this is a legacy game for Rodgers. I don't think anybody really remembers your last game like that. Unless you go out with as a Super Bowl champion. who remembers Tom Brady's last game with Tampa Bay? That was only 2 years ago. I don't think a lot of people remember that. Who remembers Joe Montana's final game with the Kansas City Chiefs? Not a lot of people. So yeah, I don't think I don't know how much you take from this game. For whatever it's worth, Rodgers played really well. For whatever it's worth, the Jets won the game. And the Jets did not really hurt their draft positioning that much. They started the day in 6th position in the NFL draft. They end the day in 7th position in the NFL draft. So they drop one slot, but it's not necessarily that detrimental to their chances. Jets will pick 7th in the NFL draft. I think that it actually came down whether the Jets drafted 7th or 8th actually came down to the Sunday night game between Detroit and Minnesota, believe it or not, because the Jets and Panthers were tied, and the tiebreaker is strength of schedule, and the Jets had played Minnesota. They had not played Detroit, and the strength of schedule was so tight that if Minnesota had won, the Jets actually would have dropped to 8th. So Jets got a little bit of help from Detroit by beating Minnesota, but really tough to find any takeaways from this game. I can't remember a Jets game I've been less enthused about in the past. And again, this isn't the first time I've watched the Jets in a lost season. I watched a lot of bad Jets seasons before. I've watched a lot of meaningless late season December, January games. But this was just really tough to watch. I mean, again, the Jets made some big plays in the passing game. Give Rodgers credit for that, because we certainly are critical of him when he doesn't play well. But the game started on a really sloppy note for the Jets, because Rodgers threw an interception on his first pass, a ball that looked like it hit Adams. So I guess maybe that's the silver lining. Is this looked like it was going to be a really long day, because both teams were really sloppy in the early stages. Jets found a little something on their offense in the second half, and were able to put up points. I think the best thing you could say about this game, though, is that it ended. I mean, when I started this game, I was just kind of hoping that the 3 hours would go by quickly, that this game would not last very long, because after this season, the best part about today is that the season's ending. I know, usually you don't feel that way. In fact, I really haven't felt that way about most Jet seasons. I mean, there have been times where I've complained about this team, but this has just been the season that's dragged on forever. And I think part of it's just there's nothing redeemable about this season. There are years where you're rebuilding, where you think, a lot of years where you're rebuilding when you're a Jets fan, but there are years where you're rebuilding where you think, okay, well, at least we didn't win a lot of games, but you saw some foundational pieces really come to the front. There are years where, maybe you're losing, but you're getting a draft pick that you think could change a franchise. None of that applied to this Jets season. This Jets team was all in, and they were pretty much, they went bust by October. It was pretty much clear that this team that has so many veteran pieces, this team that borrowed so many future resources for this season, wasn't going anywhere, that essentially made the rest of the season a drag. And we're all just waiting to get to the end for another reboot, for another reset, for another fresh start. And the Jets have finally gotten us there. What else can you say? I'm sure we'll talk a lot about this era, but this era which has been such a colossal failure, at least in some ways, is now done. Now we can turn the page and try once again to rebuild this Jets franchise. And ahead here on the Locked On Jets podcast, I'd like to close out the show with a message to Jets fans, because I think it's been a long season. I think you need to hear what I'm about to say. So I'll say it as we continue here on this Monday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Yeah, of course, the Jets will not be in the NFL playoffs, but maybe that makes it a little bit more stress-free. If you want to get in on the action, FanDuel is the place to go, because, again, $200 in bonus bets, win or lose, if you bet $5 for new customers. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. This is the Locked On Jets podcast on this Monday. We look to the future now for the New York Jets, as in the next couple weeks, the Jets will hire a new head coach and a new general manager, and look to emerge from the disaster that was the 2024 season. We can now close the book on the past, as that disaster of a 2024 season is over. But I wanted to close the show by giving Jets fans a message. I think it's a message you need to hear. I don't think it's a message you've really heard from the team all that much, especially not from the owner. I don't know if you caught Woody Johnson's comments after the game yesterday. Vintage Woody stuff. And I'm not making this up when he says this. He started talking about whether the team was disappointed. His comments were, everybody thought this was going to, not just me, everybody thought we were talented. All the networks that were paying millions of dollars, they put us in 5 primetime games. So everybody thought this was going to be unbelievable. So from that standpoint, yeah, we didn't live up to the early opinion of virtually everybody. So, Woody always his finger on the pulse of the fan base when talking about it was the season of disappointment. Well, we were on prime time 5 times. Great point by Woody. And then Woody concluded by saying, a win at the end was good. We beat them today. They played well. They didn't give up. Everyone showed up, and we did some really nice things. Woody also said that that was his focus. That's what matters to him. So that's great. Forget about the first 16 games. All that matters is the Jets beat the Miami Dolphins in Week 18. Would expect nothing less from Woody than that. We were in 5 primetime games, and we won the last game. So that's what matters. However, I don't think that does justice to what it was like being a Jets fan in the season. So let me just say to you, congratulations. You made it through the absolute worst season imaginable. This was not the worst New York Jets team I've ever watched. Now, I've been watching the Jets since 1993. My dad goes back way longer than I do. But this was probably the least fun Jets season because there really was like nothing enjoyable you could look to. There was no real winning streak during the season. I know they started 2-1. But that was very short-lived. And the first win was a very shaky win week 2 against the Tennessee Titans. The second game was a great performance, one of the best performances of the season, but it was also against the Patriots team we know was not going to be very good. And then it was just a lot of struggle. There were no moments where the Jets looked like a great team. Like a lot of the other like super teams that have failed, a lot of the other like high-profile teams that the Jets have been compared to may have fallen short. But I don't know, they went like 7-9 or something, and they had like moments where they looked great. They had moments where it felt like they were putting it together, and they weren't able to sustain it. But there were at least flashes. There were really no flashes with this Jets team, and there was nothing else like you could hang your hat on. With all due respect to Olu Fashanu, who I thought played well near the end of the season, it's not like the Jets developed a lot of talent like they did back in 2022. 2022 ended on a 6-game losing streak, but the Jets had 2 rookies of the year and a couple other promising young players that year. It's not like this was the start of a rebuild and you knew what like maybe next year will be where you weren't going to be very good, but you got your cap situation in order. You kind of got your ducks in line. Now you're ready to make some moves in the offseason. It wasn't that kind of season. It's not the kind of season where you got like a franchise altering draft pick where you feel like, all right, this season was awful, but at least we got that pick. This quarterback prospect looks really good. And I think any experienced Jets fan knows that can be, that can have varying results. Sometimes the quarterback you draft is not as good as what you'd hoped he'd be, but that's at least something you can take away from a season in the moment. There are moments where you feel like maybe you made the first step, where maybe you didn't make the playoffs, but you saw improvement over the previous season. There was nothing good about this season. Again, the Jets were all in, and this is one of those things that was treated as a virtue by the national media early in the season. How many times were the Jets praised because you heard the Jets are all in? The thing about being all in is that, if you go bust, you've lost everything. And the Jets lost everything. But beyond that, this team was not focused on young players. This team was focused on a 40-year-old quarterback who turned 41. It was focused on other high-priced guys. It was focused on guys like Hassan Reddick, who part of the reason there was so much focus on him was that he wasn't on the field. And then once he finally got on the field, he did nothing. This wasn't like a group of our guys. It wasn't a group of homegrown guys. It wasn't a group of like underachievers who, showed grit and got more out of their talent than they had any business getting. It's the total opposite. A bunch of older guys at the end of their careers who, really underperformed. It's just a really tough team to watch. And I don't feel like the Jets appreciate what they put their fans through. I think the Jets know their fans are disappointed. I think the Jets are disappointed themselves. I'm not saying the Jets are going out there trying to lose these games. But my goodness, this season was just so hard to get through. So let me just say congratulations to you because you made it. And I can't say that there will never be a season this difficult because this Jets team just finds new ways to impress us with their poor management. But if you made it through this season, you could probably make it through any season because this was really tough. These games were not enjoyable. This team was not enjoyable to watch. And it's not, like even on Sunday, you saw some milestones. You saw Devontae Adams go over 1,000 yards. You saw Aaron Rodgers toss touchdown past 500 for his career. And I think as an NFL fan, you can appreciate the magnitude of those moments. You can appreciate the magnitude of those accomplishments. But it's not like I don't have any pride as a Jets fan for those moments because these aren't our guys. This isn't Curtis Martin. It's not Wayne Krebet. It's not Lavernius Coles. It's not Kevin Mawai, not Nick Mangold. Um, these are just guys who were great with another team. Those were probably meaningful moments to watch for Packers fans, even if they happened in different uniforms. But these weren't our guys. And watching these old guys really struggle, Rodgers or Reddick or Tyron Smith, it'd be different if these were our guys. And you'd have a little bit more sympathy for them. You'd appreciate that, you'd watch them struggle, but in the context of appreciation for what they've done in the past. All these guys, what they've produced was for a different team. So they just had no equity with the Jets. Um, Everything bad about a season, you could say, was true about this Jets season. And I'm thankful it's over. I'm thankful we can turn the page. And I just want to say thank you, because I don't think we've heard it from the franchise. So you need to hear it from somebody. Thank you for your support for this team. You're a great fan. This is a great fan base. The fact that after 14 years of this stuff, you're still rooting for this team. You're still supporting them, especially those fans who went to the game yesterday. I mean, anybody who went to this game and was cheering that team on, you are in the Hall of Fame of fans as far as I'm concerned. So thank you for your support. And thank you for supporting this podcast. I really do appreciate it more than you can know, listening through a really bad season and finding a way to, I'm sure there were days where you didn't want to listen about the team, probably didn't want to listen to me complain, but you still listen, you still tuned in. And I really do appreciate that. And I'll be on all off season. We're a 5-day-a-week podcast, and things are going to heat up with this coaching search. And then we'll go into free agency. We'll go into the draft. Hopefully we'll have a lot of good content for you. But that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoyed the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoy the show and are listening on the podcast source, give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Enjoy your Monday, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Jets.